Hi everyone, welcome to the MYOB Greentree update for March 2022. In this video I will provide an overview of what is contained in the 2022.1.0 release and highlight some of the key changes. Highlights for this release: Payroll specific. For Australian payroll, the protected earnings table on the HR module control form has been updated with the value for 2022. In New Zealand payroll, when sending employee details, Greentree now checks to ensure a tax code (TED) line is included. Within Greentree Desktop, there have been enhancements to Windows Designer to support customization windows that expand based on the size of the main Greentree Desktop window. Emails can now be sent to Exchange servers using Exchange Web Services with OAuth 2 authentication. Menu access can now be maintained via the Team and User Security form for all companies. This was based on an Ideas portal suggestion. The Change Password window now requires the user to enter their current password before their new password. And finally, we will cover the issues that have been resolved in the 2022.1.0 release in the Greentree Desktop, eDocs and browser. The 2022.1 package is on FTP in the Greentree Packages directory. A new rule for eDoc sales order import scraped details is also up on FTP. This corrects scraping of a customer's purchase order number. The 2022.1 release notes are available on the Salesforce knowledge base. We have provided these in both PDF and Docs format. And there's been an update to the MYOB Greentree Security Recommendations document to include extended OAuth 2 recommendations for email sending. A couple of important notes to share. In August 2020, Microsoft began retiring Internet Explorer. As a result, Greentree no longer supports the use of Greentree Browser with Internet Explorer 11. If you use Greentree Browser with Internet Explorer 11, you must start using a supported Internet browser before August 2022. The Google Maps used in Greentree Browser will no longer work in the Internet Explorer after August 2022. In Greentree Browser, this affects the organization and contact forms. The browser control that Greentree Windows Client embeds in some forms has been replaced. The replacement uses the same WebView 2 component used by the Microsoft Edge browser. The change removes a dependency on older, deprecated Microsoft components and provides Greentree with greater security. The change affects only Greentree Windows Client, not Greentree Browser Client or other web applications. Client machines must now have Microsoft Edge WebView 2 runtime installed for the Greentree Window Client to display some items such as the Greentree End User License Agreement from Help About, the MYOB STP Legal Notice from Help About, web addresses for suppliers and customers, etc., maps for supplier customers, etc., requests for Lean Engage feedback, 3D Live Workflow desktop panels to display PDFs, Click WorkView panels, and WebView displaying the PDF view panel. The 2022.1 package adds 3 files to the files list for Connection Manager settings groups. These files must be present on client workstations running Thin Client. The previous library IE frame DLL is no longer required and can be manually removed from the file lists. The following steps are also noted in the 2022.1.0 release notes. The upgrade instructions: partners should inform sites that client machines will require Microsoft Edge WebView runtime installed. This is present by default in recent versions of Windows end-user machines, but not in older versions and generally not on servers. IT departments may have their own policies for configuring user machines, but in the absence of their guidance, our recommendation is to download and run the Evergreen Bootstrapper, which can be located at WebView 2 Microsoft Edge Developer. The 2022.1 release notes contains the link to this site. IT departments may choose to implement policies that control the location of the local cache, which defaults to jade.exe.webview2 in the client's binary directory, as detailed in the Microsoft Edge WebView 2 policy documentation. Partners should also run the Connection Administration application and confirm that the file list includes the following DLLs and confirm the embedded browser is working by logging into Connection Manager, selecting Help About and clicking on the license link. There are errors that can be returned as part of the WebView 2 installation. Creation of browser control failed indicates files are missing from the client's bin directory. The solution is to ensure the files are present in the server's bin64 directory and included in the files list in Connection Manager administration. Also, the installation of browser control failed indicates the WebView 2 runtime is not present. The solution is to download the Evergreen Bootstrapper from the WebView 2 Microsoft Edge developer website and run this. You can obtain the link to this website from within the 2022.1.0 release notes. And finally, to confirm that the Microsoft Edge WebView 2 runtime is successfully installed, open the Windows Apps and Features and search for WebView. You should see the Microsoft Edge WebView 2 runtime app returned. As mentioned earlier, there are payroll-specific enhancements relating to Australian payroll for protected earnings and for New Zealand payroll payday filing. The protected earnings table on the HR module control form has been updated for 2022. The Inland Revenue Department now requires that a tax code line, which is a TED, is included when sending an Employee Details Line record, DED. To accommodate this, Greentree checks to see if the TED line is included. If this is not found, a new tax code's missing message will display. As part of this update, we have also resolved an issue where ESS employer costs were being included in the total gross earnings amount. Now to look at the MYOB Greentree desktop enhancements. We have new right and bottom fields being added to the horizontal and vertical drop-downs in Window Designer. Emails can now be sent with OAuth 2 credentials. We'll look at the new menu access menu in Team User Security and a new change password option in User Preferences. First, let's look at the Windows Designer changes. I have my Windows Designer administration form open and I've come to that via System Customization Designer. I'm going to create a new version of the IN Inventory Item Maintenance form to demonstrate the changes that have come out in this release. So I'll save that. I've already given a customization name and we'll go into Designer. So here's the standard Inventory Item Maintenance form, and there's three areas that we're going to change. I want to move the Inventory Search field button to the far right. I want to stretch the description field to bump up against it, and I also want to move my supersession detail section closer to the bottom of this form. So let's start first with the search button. Here in the horizontal in the position and size section, I'll change that to right, and in the right field I will give it a location at 0.150. As you can see, that's instantly moved my inventory search button all the way to the right. Now let's click in the description field and we'll go for a stretch. And I'm going to stretch my right edge of that description field to bump up against the inventory search button. So I'll make that 180. And then lastly, the supersession details section, I want that to be down towards the bottom of the form. So here, instead of vertical top, I'll go vertical bottom, and I'll place the position of the bottom closer to 10. If I save these changes and view them, you can see they've been retained. If I expand the screen to full view, it's dynamically positioning those changes. You can see that they're in the right positions. And likewise, if I minimize the form, it also retains those positions. Next, we'll look at changes in the emailing preferences screen. Greentree can now send emails to Exchange servers using Exchange Web Services with OAuth 2 or basic authentication. This brings it into line with the options for email retrieval from Exchange servers. Existing email sending configuration will be converted to use SMTP with basic credentials and security option none or SLL explicit according to whether the prior enable TLS/start TLS setting was off or on. The TLS/start TLS setting has been removed. On the Emailing Preferences tab of General System Preferences, you'll see a new Credentials option available. When the package is loaded, the server type is automatically set to SMTP, and authentication method is set to basic. To use OAuth 2, you need to change the server type to Exchange and select OAuth 2. You need to save these settings before you log in. When you log in, you will be directed to a Microsoft sign-in page where you can log in with your OAuth 2 details. And once you're successfully authenticated, your OAuth login token is stored on the Greentree system. You can use the Token Management window, which is found under System, Utilities, Token Management, to check that users' OAuth tokens are kept up to date and set email reminders for when the tokens are due to expire. To support this, new versions of the libraries GreentreeMail.dll, GreentreeMailCore.dll and Dispose.email.dll have been provided in this release. Further information is contained in the MYOB Greentree Security Recommendations document on the knowledge base. The Team and User Inquiry form and menu item have been renamed to Team and User Security. The form has been enhanced to allow editing of menu assignments. An administrator can now manage menu access for teams and users across all companies on a single form without the need to change company. The same view is for teams or users. Under User Preferences, there is a new Change Password button. Users have to enter their current password before they enter their new password and confirm this. Administrators can still change another user's password as before. Moving on to general improvements, there have been general improvements for both security and performance. This release includes the following updates that increase the security of the MYOB Greentree system. Behind the scenes improvements have been made to the lockout feature. If a user tries to log in with the incorrect username and password too many times, they are prevented from trying again. This applies to Greentree Desktop, Management Console and Credit Card Maintenance form. For read-only drop-down lists, a user can no longer use the drop-down icon. And behind-the-scenes changes have been made to how identifiers used by Greentree Browser are generated. This release includes an enhancement to improve the importing time of files. This will be most noticeable when importing emails by eDocs, particularly for directories that contain 1,000 or more files. And lastly, we'll move to the Resolved Issues section. We've got resolved issues for Desktop, eDocs, HR Payroll and Browser General. For APH balance reporting, the total column Total Outstanding Value is now displaying correctly when applying an AP payment, journal or credit note to invoices in current, previous or future periods. For AR invoice and AR credit note entry form, performance has been improved on loading forms for large databases. The DIM imported AP credit note now creates an unapplied transaction. An e-reporting run that generates AR statements no longer locks accounts receivable. For fixed assets, where an asset created with a calculation based on useful life is revalued or adjusted, the revaluation adjustment is now based on the remaining useful life, not the full useful life. For Data Import Manager, purchase orders imported where lines are tax inclusive are now calculated correctly. In Free, running the GTIN stock items supplier function now does not remove quantity break pricing. Sales orders can now be taken off hold where there is a kit set item that hasn't been assigned a serial lot number without receiving an error. An error no longer occurs when using Microsoft Query to retrieve data from ODBC. And if there is not enough area on a monitor screen to display the full table, the right edge of the table now aligns with the right edge of the monitor. The report form Favorites bookmarks no longer returns an error. When attaching an email file to a service request, the file is no longer empty. Moving to eDocs, a 1035 error no longer occurs when selecting Create AP Invoice. Stock lines entered on stock tabs are now automatically matching. Scraping a sales order now correctly updates customer's purchase order number. An updated rule is now available on FTP for this. You can now copy multiple lines in an eDoc AP invoice without receiving a 14051 error. For HR Payroll, for STP Phase 2, the allowance detail code for a private vehicle is now correctly set to V1. You can now enter leave without pay without receiving a 14079 error. The Maintain Pay Run screen is now opened when importing pays. When creating a payday lodgement from the EI Amendment Post 104-2020 interface file, the field was in the incorrect position. This has been resolved with a new interface name called EI Amendment Post 14-2022, which is set as the default interface on the other tab of the Inland Revenue Reporting Configuration form. For New Zealand only, tax is now correct on extra pays, including bonuses, back pays and termination payouts. The size of the alpha field used to store a CRM contact surname has been increased from 20 to 30 characters. You can now create and maintain an HR person with a surname of 30 characters linked to a contact, and it no longer overflows the contact surname field. Where a contact is linked to a customer, only the first 20 characters of the contact's alpha field are synchronized with the customer's alpha field. And lastly, General, the HR and Payroll menus are now available for an HR user. And that brings me to the end of this 2022.1 webinar. If you have any queries, please email proserve.ed@myb.com. Thank you.